What we have culturally is a product. The good thing about it is that it is intangible, then it is also tangible. You can directly see how it's impacting people, how it's making people happy, how it's making people proud. It's good for the local professionals.
Africa's creative sector, in particular the music industry, has grown rapidly in the past several years as Western and diaspora consumers have become more interested in both African cultural products and its talent. And as the continent continues to experience high rates of unemployment among the youth, some analysts say that outsourcing Africa's creative talent can lead to increased income, skill development, and recognition on a larger stage. Nigerian music entrepreneur Kayode Adebayo, founder of Ckrowd.com, a music business education and digital profiling platform for music industry professionals, tells me that his company creates links between African creative talents and Western companies that need the relatively cheaper labor skills.
The idea for Ckrowd basically is we use it. It's a technology that we use to match trained music industry professionals with international hiring business enterprises that want to outsource to Africa in order to kind of lower their operational cost, basically. So
producers, mixers,
producers,
engineers,
mixers, journalists, social media managers. So what we do as a company, as a business also, is that we help some international Western or developed market enterprises manage their hiring and then their business professional services here in Nigeria. So for them, they lower the cost of operating globally. And then, of course, the cost of human resource here is a little bit more affordable for them. So we train and then verify and then outsource the labor here to them. And, that whole matchmaking happens. And it's good for the local professionals because they get more paid, they get better pay for what they do, more than what the local market can afford them. Then for the other guys also, the Western market guys, it's more affordable, basically. Right. Yeah, they probably save as much as 60% of the total cost of operations for them. So It's a win-win situation.
How do you see the music and creative industries contributing to new employment opportunities for young people on the continent? We know Africa has the highest youth unemployment compared to other parts of the world. Talk to us about some of the existing opportunities or potential opportunities in the creative arts.
So in that direction, I think Africa has a very strong biological advantage right now that Africa itself needs to kind of come into and understand very well on how to leverage it. Between now and 2035, Africa is going to have the youngest population in the world, which is more like the youngest workforce. By the time it's 2035, thereabout, it is already pitched that Africa will have 60% of its population below 25. That's a huge advantage. Most of the developed countries will be already old and they'll be seeking new capacities, especially in the human resource, to be able to do most of this work. Africa has a lot of advantage in the area of culture depth also, because you have 54 countries with more than 10,000 tribes. And you know what each tribe represents. They have their own unique language, their own unique culture, unique beliefs, and all that. And it goes on and on. So imagine taking one tribe, looking how deep it can be, then having to comb through more than 10,000 tribes. So that's huge advantage. And the creative space, now let's even take films, for example. We see that the films out there in Hollywood that are kind of resonating now are the films that are like the old and remade films, which a lot of people are tired of. But Why? Because there's scarcity of fresh stories, there's scarcity of fresh ideas, scarcity of fresh experiences. Africa has a tendency to be able to provide that, to the world. And we see how things like the Lion King, the Wakanda story, Black Panther, and all that, how much it did, when eventually they were out there. And of course, there are opportunities. There are people right now that are looking deeper into the space to be able to kind of fetch out new diamonds and how, things that become very valuable. Let's look at the music space. We see what Afrobeat is doing, what Amapiano is doing. And there are a lot of other genres in music that are still there unexplored that has the capacity to be very interesting, basically, when it comes to, how we know technology now. You chop a little from this music, you chop a little from this music, add it together, it becomes something fresh. So we are in a very strong place of potential, especially when it comes to human resource, because on the African continent, these young people that we're talking about, they have very diverse understanding that is different from what already prevails in the West. They have very unique experiences. And, an African will understand far stronger, creativity, especially when it comes to colors. He sees brown a lot because of the roads are untarred. He sees green a lot because he sees fresh vegetation and all that. So all this coming into skills that helps to translate this creativity puts Africa in a very strong place, especially when it comes to what is happening now and what is happening in the future. We see that all these music artists are shutting down 100,000 capacity arenas, 50,000 capacity arenas. They are already mainstream artists on Glastonbury and all these big festivals across the world. So it shows that Africa needs to position better to capture that value within Africa, not allowing it to just go out as it's going out right now. But this is the first stage, and I believe that it will get into the growth stage and then the scaling stage. And I'm hoping that Africa will have been able to sit up then to understand how to be able to capture the value chain more and the supply chain within the African continent, basically.
Now, your company connects local talent in Africa to Western companies that are seeking people in the creative space. What specific roles and careers within these industries do you see or do you think have the most potential for growth and impact?
The list goes on and on. For example, we have people that are savvy with social media, that are social media managers, digital marketers. You have, IT admin roles. You have product managers. You have people even in the office admin roles. The list goes on and on. Producers, artist managers. You have, very recently we got, a particular role which was new to me, but it's something that is a big deal. Royalty analysts, for those people that
streaming music
and all that. So the roles goes on and on. It's like a never-ending, even legal, even from the legal space. You have the people in the legal space, the licensing space, journalists, and it goes on and on because it has, from an African perspective, especially Nigerian perspective, we are not only just creators of maybe content and we are putting it out into the world and it's been exported. Africa, especially Nigeria, are tastemakers also in this space. The moment music is released, even the diaspora is waiting on Nigerians to react to the music first before they take it and start to run with it. So beyond just creating products, we are also more like the who we call the standard structure that kind of verifies or satisfies the songs before it starts to pick up on it. So anything we don't think is cool,
you have to co-sign first before everybody.
Exactly, the world goes quiet on it. But the moment we say this is interesting, this is good, and you say the buzz, then the world picks it up and then it starts to grow and grow, and that is the unique position. So the roles are, it's like it's an industry. So just like you will need the CEOs to the person that cleans the floor in the office, that whole wide range is what is needed. And the moment the world is starting to see that, look, there's advantages in working and outsourcing our professional services to the continent because it's more affordable. I wouldn't like to use the other word, but it's more affordable. So for the person I'm paying $8,000 in maybe, for example, LA, to come and play a saxophone on some few songs that I'm recording as an album, I will be able to get an African, especially a Nigerian, that could probably do that for $1,200, $2,000. Saves me a lot of money, but the local Nigerian also enjoys the arbitrage, the difference between the foreign exchange and the local currency, because it's able to multiply by a couple of 1,000 to 2,000 naira here, and it becomes quite something sizable for him to be able to run his own personal economy.
Right.
So it's something that is very interesting to see.
Now, like you said, Africa's working age population is expected to grow significantly by 2035, 2045, as has been projected by the UN. And that, like you said, the continent can leverage this demographic advantage to become a global talent hub in the creative industries. But what role does education and skills development play in preparing young Africans for careers in this creative industry? And how can the governments or private sectors invest in this?
Well, yeah, so it's very important because I remember when we wanted to start to work with some international organizations, as much as they loved Africa, they loved Nigeria, they loved what we were coming up with in, intelligence, in creativity and all that. I remember that one of our clients, the first thing he said then was that, Kayode, the only problem I have is professionalism. We are not sure how professional these guys are, because for me here, I hire somebody, it might be expensive, but the moment I give the person that job, I can go to sleep.
They'll execute.
Yeah, they will execute. I can go to sleep and be sure that he will be there. But the fear I have with your people is that, look, we are not sure how professional they are, how much they understand this as a business and all that. So one of the first things we did was that we started to build relationships that had the capacity to upskill. So one of those things was that I belong to an organization called Arts Connect Africa, which is like a how do I call it now? A brain trust and resource people that have the highest of experience, especially in that whole music value chain. You have people that are booking agents for the topmost, biggest Grammy winners. You had artist managers of the biggest artists on the African continent and even globally. We had them in that whole chain. So it's a big network. One of the very things that drew me to the ACA network, we call it ACA, is the fact that it's globally connected across all continents. Then everybody was passionate about wanting to upskill Africa. And then one way or the other, talk around culture exchanges, then economic, economic development for Africa, basically. Want to see that economic impact of what culture can do to change the narrative of what is on the African continent, which a lot of people relate to poverty. So I joined the organization, and I'm on the board of directors now, one of the board of directors there now. And it was so unique how he aligned also with Ckrowd, which is our technology company. So upskilling, basically, education, very important. Monetization, very important. How do we give career growth opportunities to these people that is global? Then how do we, one way or the other, make sure that what they are earning is equivalent to the level of effort that they put into it? And the third one was structure, more like understanding what inputs are and what should be the requisite output that should come from that, which technology helps to do, basically. Government must be involved in this. But what I found out also is that government is always playing catch up with things like this, because governments, they are there, they are
the private sector
and all that.
Yeah,
they don't really understand what the inputs and outputs is, especially from productizing those cultural experiences and all that. So with government needs to be taught. So that's why even what we are doing right now at the ACA level is having government engagement, having engagement with the academia also, and having very close contact with the industry. So that what that does is that we are providing education and upskilling trainings to these people. And those that are already doing it, we are bringing everybody together and say, okay, if all you guys are doing this already, why don't you hand over the graduates from this particular, training institutes, especially training professionals at different layers. Then we now eventually onboard them to technology and then create the matching that happens between the opportunities and then the local professionals.
And the talent.
And you see how a lot of good things are happening, but it's still not happening at the scale that we want it to happen yet.
Right.
Because government involvement is slow, but I think they will little by little, we'll get everybody in, we'll get the people at the finance and funding level in also, and then we'll get even the universities, we'll get them in basically so that it becomes a curriculum, where, naturally through a 4-year, 3-year period, people graduate that have this experience and exposure already, and it's easy to be able to have that wheel turning consistently and churning out good results.
We've seen, like you alluded to earlier, a lot of global interest in African cultural products, its music, its fashion. In what ways can the music and the creative industries contribute to, I guess, the broader economic development of African economies? And how do you measure the socioeconomic impact of these creative industries on African communities? So how, for example, does Ashake selling out Madison Square Garden in New York or the O2 Arena translate to his local community in, I don't remember where Ashake is. I know Burna Boy is from Lagos, Port Harcourt.
Original Lagos, not
right.
The Lagos. Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the first thing to do in that space is for all stakeholders to know and come to that realization that this is a product. What we have culturally is a product. And the good thing about it is that it is intangible, then it is also tangible, because you can directly see how it's impacting people, how it's making people happy, how it's making people proud, how it's making people grow a sense of belief in themselves, and how it is changing the ideology of how things work, basically. So the arrangement is every stakeholder needs to be aware that this is real. This is economics. There's an economy that needs to be built out of this. Because by the time everybody comes to that realization, what happens is that everybody now sits up, right? The government starts to put together policies that will enable investors to come in. Investors understand that infrastructures need to be built. For example, an O2 Arena, it's an edifice, brick and mortar, can hold more than 20,000 people in capacity, has a lot of other ancillary services that it provides that allows you capture value from people. People put their hands in their pocket and they want to be involved in that experience. The more of those things that you have within your economy, the better for you. Nigeria is 200 million people, for example. Imagine if we had arenas like that we had 40 of them spread around different states. It means that an artist on the local level can, with the fan base that it has, can tour, and eventually people wanting to come in to that arena to be involved. Whether it is a freemium package where you sell advertising to different companies, you work out the model that works for your country. And the finance people are there, those that are willing to fund this. We're already seeing a lot of them coming into the African continent, especially Nigeria. Spotify is on ground, and a lot of these companies are here. And then you see also that the academia too sees this as something serious. Can people start to take masters in one particular area of that particular knowledge-based experience? Can they start to have PhD in this? So it's a how do I call it? It's a deliberate attempt. The Western governments or the developed economies, they understood this because, of course, they've been in there for quite a while. 100 years of Hollywood. Imagine. So they understand all that. They created those things where the moment you have product, they know how to capture the value because they have all the infrastructure and all the necessary human resource and material resource to be able to do it. That is what we now need to do on the African continent, where we have those resources on ground. We have the human resource, we have the material resource to be able to capture. So that Ashake being in O2 Arena just becomes one of those things that happen to him. It doesn't become a norm because he probably will have done 15 of those kinds of shows here in Nigeria or in Ghana before he now says, okay, he has a booking also in London, and not London being like the main thing he has to do for the year. So that's the way I see it. And we at ACA are already working to a large extent to be able to unite all the stakeholders and kind of engage them in a way where they understand. They themselves need upskilling. They need to have a clear understanding of how all these things work so that you're able to understand how Wizkid, you understand the arithmetic of how Wizkid started 12, 15 years ago and how that whole thing built up, the investment that went into him at different layers and different levels before he became that superstar now that can command maybe a $500,000 show at somewhere in France and call for a private jet as part of his conditions for him to appear at the show. And then through that, we're able to kind of scale that process for a lot more music artists, and then also have a situation where a lot more professionals get involved in that whole process also and make income.